Would you rather tow a car with a chain or a spring?
This was the time when I thought Rippetoe was wrong about the arm pull. So I tried to prove that I am right and he is wrong. First, let's hear from Rippetoe why arm pull is problematic.
An arm pull is an error because it is a power leak. All right? And we go back to the simple explanation we always use. Do you tow a car with a chain or a spring? And why? A spring is a terribly inefficient object with which to transfer force because it is deformable. If the component can deform as it is transferring force, then some of the force transfer gets absorbed in the deformation.
Here's another explanation from Rippetoe.
When you jump up in the air, you are transmitting the force of knee and hip extension to the platform. Between the platform and the bar, you are applying force to the load. That load must experience the full measure of the force you could produce with your knees and hips. And that means that the elbows must be straight. Because if they are bent, they can be straightened out. And if they can be straightened out, then some of the force that you are going to try to get down to the bar will be absorbed in straightening out the elbows.
I do believe that rigid segment is better at transferring force than a deformable segment. But the thing is, I've never seen an Olympic lift done with an arm pull where the arms re-straighten again. At least not with my own eyes and not with my own lifts. And when discussing this with my fellow coach, his answer was,
maybe it's not heavy enough.
damn! So I started to investigate more by watching more Olympic weightlifting videos, especially the ones where the slow motion is being shown. Here's my finding. I am not 100% wrong because I do see that there are some lifters that bend their arms and their arms doesn't straighten again. These are the examples. Since the arm stays bent, would it be fair to say that the arms are rigid? And if it's rigid, it should have transferred the force fully, right? But unfortunately for me, I also see that Rippetoe is right. There are some lifters that pulls with bent elbows, and those elbows re-straighten again. This proves that there is some force leakage from the arm bend during the pull. Honestly, at this point, I'm ready to admit defeat again. If one option has a risk of a power leak because of the bent elbows and the other one doesn't, well, it means that as much as you can, you should pull with straight arms. But just for the sake of argument, let's try to analyze if there's any other inefficiencies that can arise from pulling with bent arms. The very important component of Olympic lifts is to pull the bar off with enough acceleration so that you can catch it above your head or on top of your shoulders. Unfortunately, you can only accelerate the bar by producing force against the floor. The moment your feet leaves the floor as you jump, you can no longer provide a meaningful amount of force onto the bar. In this case, it's very, very important to provide the maximum amount of force before our feet leave the floor. The arm pull reduces the amount of force we can give towards the bar. There are two reasons why. Reason number one is that it reduces the amount of time we can accelerate the bar. Imagine if you have a car and you put your feet on the accelerator for 10 seconds and you let the car run and roll until it stops. The other time, you only press the accelerator for 5 seconds. Which car will be able to move further? I'm sure when you press the accelerator longer, the car will go further. The arm pull reduces the chance of us to accelerate the bar, because with that arm pull, we reach the jumping position a little bit earlier, thus reducing the amount of time where the bar can be spent to be accelerated. And number 2, it has something to do with the concept of lever. Let's use this trebuchet as an example. You have a very long beam on the left side of the pivot, which is attached to the sling and the payload. Imagine that this sling and the payload is your arms and the barbell. On the other side of the pivot, you have a shorter segment of beam being attached to a very heavy counterweight. These are our hip extensors that produce a high amount of force to accelerate the sling and the payload on the other side. The longer the beam on the left side of the pivot means that the longer moment arm from the fulcrum to the load. This will create a higher and higher amount of acceleration on the payload itself. If we apply this concept to an Olympic lift, if we can keep our back more horizontal, we can keep a longer moment arms from the hip to the bar, the faster we can accelerate the bar vertically. Whereas bent arm means that your arms will be artificially shorter. If you observe from a sagittal plane, when the arm gets shorter, the bar will be slightly in front of the midfoot. This creates additional unnecessary moment arm. How do we try to fix it when we are moving? We try to bring the bar back to the midfoot by raising the chest up and bending the knees a little bit earlier than necessary. Because of this, the position of the jumping position will have a slightly more vertical back angle, which means the distance between the bar and the hip will be shorter, and in this case, the amount of leverage that we can get from this position will be less as compared to when we are pulling with long arms and more horizontal back angle. The last small question that I have in my mind is whether the arm pull can give us meaningful amount of acceleration towards the bar. Well, I think that the arm pull will give some small amount of force towards the bar, but would we rather use this small amount of force from the small engine of the arms or the bigger engine of the hip extensors and the knee extensors? Because the moment we rely too much on the arm pull, we lose our capability of using the bigger engines of the hip and knee extensors. So this concludes that the arm pull is not efficient, and this also proves that Rippetoe is right once again. Thank you.